Hello, I am legendary extreme sportsman Rum Duffalo, and this is another board deck and dice review, because this has been on Kickstarter, but this is now a proper copy, so we're going to take a look at this properly. In this game, don't know if you have any guesses what this game may be, but it is Summit. Summit is the first board game from Inside Up Games, and the first thing you're going to notice with Summit is the production quality is off the chart. This is so impressive for a first-time publisher and developer, and I've reviewed a lot of games recently with good production quality. Dice Forge springs to mind, and while this insert isn't quite functional in the same league as Dice Forge, it is right up there with Dice Forge in terms of one of the best inserts I've seen, as in everything has a place and it fits neatly. That does bring about one issue out of the game, but we'll come to that later. Let's take a look at Summit. I have the board laid out here, of which you can see half. I may actually, for the first time ever, get up and move the camera, but we'll see how we get on. I'm not going to try and explain the whole game to you. I'll try and explain the basic premises, and because there's various modes, there's solo and cooperative, and then a competitive mode as well. Each player will have their own player board, and this is a very important part of the game because you have your supplies, your oxygen, and the weight of your equipment, your health, and then your speed. And all these tracks affect each other. So at the start of the game, you can either take some pre-suggested layouts, or you can decide your own. And what you're doing is you're just choosing between equipment, supplies and oxygen, and these three things will have an impact on everything else. So let's say at the start of the game, there's a strong chance that I'm going to use supplies every go, but not as much. Oxygen really depends on weather conditions and the certain parts of the mountain you'll be traversing. I was going to say travailing, but that's totally wrong. So if I take let's say 7 supplies, I've moved past 1 dumbbell, and that means I must move my heaviness on 1. Now, it's really clever because whichever way you move the cube, you move the other cube, so that it's set up for that. Okay, so I've taken 7 supplies and I've got 1 weight. So I'm going to take 5 lots of oxygen, which passes 2, so I've got another 2 there, so I'm still at full speed. But then I come to my items, and I might want to take 2 items. Some items are heavier than others. The wingsuit, which is hilarious and I haven't had a chance to use yet, is 3. So should we go for it? Yeah, we can take the wingsuit. Let's say I choose to take the wingsuit, so I've put on another 3. Now this affects my speed, so my speed comes down from 6 to 5. Now this is important because this is essentially how many spots you can move on the ropes, how many knots. You have a little mountaineer and some various tokens, which will be different if you're playing the cooperative or the competitive modes. So on the competitive modes, these flags are used to track who gets, you probably can't see that, who gets to certain points on the mountains first. The first player getting more points, second player less, and so on and so on. So that's your player board. I will keep this here because I want to talk about this later. In competitive mode, you have, and co-op mode, you have these common components. So you have the event cards, the item cards, and the mounting cards. And each player will be given 3 mounting tiles at the start of the game, and they will draw back up to 3 at the end of the go. You also have a starting tile, which I haven't put on, which is a square one as opposed to these triangular ones. Let me just see where I put them. And there are various different ones depending on how many players you have. We'll have a look at those again later. So the first thing you do is you decide what difficulty you are doing it on, which goes from chill all the way up to legendary. And that affects a number of things. It affects where the blizzard tracker starts, and it affects where you start. So if I get a base camp tile, if I'm going to start on chill, I can start practically halfway up the mountain. But if I want to start on anything else, you have to move down to the appropriate thing. So risky, I think, is a good starting place. And then on your go, you're going to decide with your movement whether to forgo your movement to supply, and in the competitive game you can only supply at camps. In the cooperative game, down the side of the board you'll have your own Sherpa who you can supply from at any time by missing your go. And then you'll look at your various tiles and you'll decide which is the best movement. I didn't plan this, but luckily all 3 different tiles have come out. So yellow yellow rope tiles, that means it's thin air, and when you fully traverse one of these tiles, you lose an oxygen tank. Thin ice tiles just take longer to traverse, so they generally have more knots on. So if I've got movement at 5, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'd stop there. You only put a tile out when you can move onto it. And then you have your normal tiles as well for a further 2 spots. So they're generally more efficient ways of climbing the mountain. Tiles must be laid by matching sides, and your rope at least must match. So I cannot, for example, lay a long side here to try and get around it sneakily. It must be short side to short side or long side to long side. And you will carry on like this up the mountain, obeying the various rules of rock climbing, until you get to halfway camp, the summit, back down to halfway camp and the base camp. And if you're first at each of those places, you're going to get the most points. But of course, it's not as easy as that, because after you've made your movement on every go, you will roll 2 dice, the event dice, which has blanks and mountains. And if you roll a mountain, you must take one of the blue event cards and do what it says. For example, Contagious, keep this card face up, no one can enter a tile that you occupy, and vice versa. Which is great if you're in the lead, not so great if you're at the back. And there are various ways of removing cards and effect tokens from your player board as well. So that can be a good or a bad one. There's ones that give you extra things, ones that give you bad things, and all sorts. Then you also roll the weather die. The weather die can be sunny, in which case you don't have to spend any supplies. Minor snow, which is 1 supply. 2 snow, which is 2 supplies, and then if you roll a blizzard, that affects everyone, no matter whose go it is, and you will lose wherever you will move your token up on the blizzard track, and you will lose whatever is shown on the blizzard track. So then it's simply a race to the top. Now, in competitive mode, what's also added down this side is a karma track where you all start at 5. It goes all the way up to 12. But the karma track is really interesting. You will also have a hand of 4 karma cards. And karma cards will either be nice actions, nasty actions, or a choice. If you play a nice action on another player, for example, they may skip rolling the event die, you will go up on the karma track, and whatever number you land on the karma track will be your score at the end of the game. So wherever you are at the end of the game, that will add to your score, which can be massive. For example, this one, you can decrease the target's weight by 1. This one is a choice. You either get +1 or -1 for removing cards from people. If it's a negative card you remove from someone, you get positive karma. And this one, you get to make someone discard an item or token of your choice, and you would lose 2 karma for that. So it creates this really interesting thing of trying to climb the karma track for points, but then you get a really nasty card that makes you laugh, like cut someone's rope, and you think, well, yeah, I'm not sure I need these points. It might be more interesting to see them fall off the edge of the mountain. There is player elimination in this game, but unlike many games of a competitive nature where there is player elimination, the eliminated player can still win if they score more points. On the cooperative side, you are working together to get to the top of the mountain and back, and instead of the scoring tracks and the karma track, you have your Sherpas down, you have your Ben Shermans down this side, and they carry extra equipment for you and extra supplies, extra oxygen and extra item cards, which you can get off them by missing your go. And then there's a time track, so your score depends on how long you take to get up and down the mountain. Down this side there's also a solution for dropping items on the mountain, because obviously if you drop an item on the mountain you can't just leave a card there, so they have numbered tokens, and the game comes with various other tokens that do different things depending on what event cards you bring out. As I say, the insert is fantastic. You can store everything nicely in here. All the tokens go under the player boards. The triangular tiles for the climbing of the mountain comes out, and you can use that rather than having a pile on a table. It's really, really well thought through. The player boards also contain unique powers that can be used on your go. So essentially, competitive mode is a race to the top with Take That featured, and cooperative mode is again a race to the top, but you're playing against scores and against the difficulty of the mountain. So that is a very brief look at Summit. So what do we think of Summit? I am the complete opposite of Mr. Little Known Reviewer Tom Vassell on this one, because he enjoyed the cooperative mode but didn't like the competitive mode so much, and I'm completely the opposite, and the group I play with was completely the opposite. The cooperative mode for me, not being a mountaineer, was more thematic than the competitive mode. I'm going to get those mixed up, I'm sure. So the versus mode. So the mode where you're working together was more thematic because you've got time of day, you have your Sherpas, you've got to help each other, and therefore for me that one was a bit more take it or leave it. I didn't engage with the excitement. I don't like climbing because I've got far too much weight to pull up anything I'm climbing, regardless of equipment. I have my belly, so climbing isn't really for me, and so with it being that much more thematic, I didn't get into it. That being said, the mechanics are solid and the gameplay is solid, and if you like climbing or you want a different style of cooperative game, then there's going to be mileage in the cooperative for you. The competitive game just gives me an excellent excuse to be nasty to my friends, and that fits with the theme as well. It's more kind of Sylvester Stallone's cliffhanger than true climbing. You lose the time of day, you lose the Sherpas, you're doing ridiculous things like cutting each other's rope and stealing each other's equipment, and it becomes more of a race game than a climbing game solely, though the climbing theme is still there with the tiles and the thin air and the balancing of your supplies. But I had a lot more fun with that. And I think the reason I had a lot more fun with this over other Take That games is this karma system, which is absolute genius and should be used in loads of games. The idea that the Take That cards aren't just nasty and you can be rewarded for using them in a nice way with points, which is what you want to win the game, but then if you've got a lot of good karma and everyone else has not really bothered, then you've got the opportunity to be quite nasty with some of those really powerful meme cards, but it's going to cost you 2 or 3 karma. Another thing in the versus game which I forgot to mention is that you can actually block people with your mountaineer. So if you've created a path at the mountain and there's only one way past, they have to ask permission to pass you. If you let them pass, you get +1 karma. If you say no, you're going to have to wait, you get -2 karma. So there's another motivation to be nice to people in advance, so that when they want to get past you, when you're on the summit tile, which has a kind of a bit where there's only one space, you can just sit there and block people while you use your special power to refill, and then go down the mountain and use really nice karma cards to try and build yourself back up. And I really, really like that system. It makes me think of whether something like that could be added to games like Adrenaline, where you're playing versus, but you toss someone else a grenade to help them finish someone off, and you get positive points for that. I really like that mechanic of, well, if you want to be nasty, it's going to cost you, and you're going to have to be nice to build up some nastiness points. I really like that. Also, I really, really like the player boards with the way they moving stuff up affects the rest of your stats. Your movement is going to be affected by how much you carry, and it's done really clearly. You look at it the first time and you think, oh my goodness, what is all this? But it makes sense and it works. The one thing with the player boards, and it's a real shame, is that the cubes, you probably saw on the overview, the cubes don't quite fit into the holes that have been cut for them. So they've gone to the trouble of cutting these holes to keep things stable, yet the cubes sit on the top of them and they can still get knocked. And it's a real shame, given that the rest of the component quality is so high, it really makes this stand out. And in a game where the rest of the components weren't so good, you'd be like, oh, well, you know, that is on par with the rest of the components. But this is really stands out because of the rest of the components. You could kind of force them in, but being as this is a review copy I'm passing around, I don't want to force it in and you know, do damage for the rest of the reviewers. So I can't say whether forcing them in would do any damage or would make the kind of slots look differently. It's just a real shame given the care and time that's gone into everything else. Let's talk about the rules as well. The rules, because we do our intimidation factor and our ease of rules. So intimidation factor is quite high on this game until you start playing. There's lots going on. There's two sides to the board that are different. There's tiles, there's 3 different types of cards, there's these boards which look scary, many components. The intimidation factor is quite high, but if you just sit down and play it, that fades very quickly. The rules, now, I swung back and forth on the rules because I read the rules before looking at any of the components and playing it. I thought, that seems to make sense, things seem to be in a sensible position. Yet when I went to refer to the rules for certain things, I couldn't find certain things in the places where I thought they would be. And maybe it's just a lack of repetition where there could be an extra bit of clarification, but the rules went down in my estimation when I was actually playing the game and had to refer to them. Now I only had to refer to them in the first game of each mode, but it's just worth noting that. In terms of fun, versus game, I absolutely loved it. The Take That was brilliantly balanced with the karma system. The cooperative game was hit or miss for me. In our first cooperative game, we played it on the easiest setting, which is chill. I would never play chill again. And part of that was to do with the look, we haven't talked about it, but the look of the way the mountain tiles come out. In the cooperative game, it was a 2-player cooperative game, and I went first, and I just raced up the mountain, laid out my tiles, and the other guy just followed me, and then followed me back down, and that was it. And the only real challenges we had were events and the weather dice, but because the path was so easy, it didn't really affect us. We played the next game on Risky, which is like the middle level, and that was a lot more difficult. We still won, but we had to go multiple paths. It wasn't just this one straight up and straight down. So that look could really affect you, particularly on the easier difficulties. And actually my recommendation would be to ignore the chill level unless you're playing with really young kids. Just go straight onto the other ones, because if that look happens to you as well, then it can really put you off, I guess. So cooperative wasn't as fun for me, but again, if you're into that mountaineering thing, I think you're going to find a lot more. Play it on the harder difficulty. It really doesn't add any complexity, it just adds difficulty. So there's nothing component-wise added in that you need to worry about. It gives you setups for the players if you were playing your first game. Again, that wasn't that difficult to work out. The only thing is that you know roughly how much food you're going to want to take with you after one game. But still, have a play. I think this is a game that shines when it's more difficult for you. Versus mode, yeah, love it. Would play it again in a heartbeat, and would just try to be as nasty as possible, you know, looking like a goodie on the way up and then just cutting people's ropes and all that sort of thing. Worth saying with these Take That elements as well is they do seem to be balanced in that the more powerful ones, nasty ones, seem to be played more effectively from behind. So if you're behind, I couldn't cut someone's rope if I'm in front of them, makes sense. So there is that as well. There does seem to be that balancing or kind of attempt at elastic banding for people who are far behind. One slight concern is if someone gets really far ahead, is it possible to stop them? Again, that's going to come down to the look of the cards, I think. Hasn't been too much of a problem in the games I've played. So I can recommend this game to people who want a thematic climbing game. I can recommend it to people who want the option of co-op and I Take That competitive. It probably wouldn't be one that I would have in my collection, but then I have limited space and limited supply, but I would absolutely play the competitive mode if I was offered at any time. And the reason it wouldn't be in my collection is I have race games that I'm happy with, and that theme suits me most, so really it is down to theme. But I absolutely love the effort that's gone into this. When you review prototypes and Kickstarter games, you get a sense of the love that's gone into a project, and this project is absolutely cram-packed with love, and I look forward to seeing what Connor comes up with next. So thanks very much for watching. This has been Board Deck and Dice, and we'll see you next time.